Episode 31. Manager Sanchez and Jeff's Excuse.
Mr. Sanchez.
Jeff said as he recognized him. He had seen this man before at Kenneth Stokes' banquet. He didn't expect this hotel to be operated by his own family. I don't dare to accept that salutation. You can just call me Old Kyle. Kyle, Sanchez said, feeling flattered. Jeff was a very easygoing person, but in the end still addressed Kyle formally as Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Florento, why are you here? Kyle asked while bowing.
Oh, I'm going to hang out with my classmates. I don't want to go back to the university tonight, so I'll stay here with you.
Jeff said, smiling. So, that's the case. Kyle nodded. He then turned to the receptionist and asked, is this young man's room ready?
It's Rey ready.
The front desk girl said with a slightly trembling voice. She didn't expect that the young man in front of her, who was wearing an unbearable set of clothes, could make Manager Sanchez so polite. All the staff, including her, were indifferent to Jeff.
This young man has the big bed on the 3rd floor, next to the stairwell.
She said. What? That room is the worst room in the entire hotel. Kyle said angrily. This hotel belongs to Mr. Florento. It's an honor for Mr. Florento to come here, but you've given him the worst room.
Mr. Sanchez, don't blame them. My friend got a room for me.
Jeff said as he looked at Kyle's angry expression and was quite worried that the staff would be implicated.
After all, it wasn't their fault.
Oh, sir, your friend is too ungrateful. Kyle said indignantly. How about this? I'll give you the most respected room in the hotel.
No need. I'll just stay in that room tonight. Don't worry, I understand your feelings.
Jeff said as he patted Kyle's shoulder. Only if it's no trouble to you, sir. Kyle said. Since Jeff had already said so, Kyle did not dare disobey him.
All right, you can go busy yourselves. I'll head up now.
Jeff said, and walked toward his room. The waiters' eyes were filled with respect toward Jeff. They all brought out their brightest, smiling faces for him, which made Jeff feel uncomfortable for a while. Then they smiled lightly and continued with their work. The moment Jeff laid down in his room, someone pushed in a dining cart filled with expensive red wine and snacks. Then the cleaning staff appeared, wanting to clean his room inside and out. Then a gorgeous model dropped by who wanted to chat with Jeff, but Jeff refused.
That's Kyle.
Jeff thought while smiling bitterly inside, after everything quieted down.
Damn it.
Jeff looked at his watch. It had been more than an hour since he got to the hotel. Jeff was hesitating whether he should tell Rose the truth.
But it was too late now. If Rey was planning to sleep with Rose tonight, the two of them would already be smooching. Hi, forget it. Rose might not even believe it even if I told her. She might even mock me for being shameless and trying to take advantage of her.
He thought, thinking about Rose's attitude toward him. Jeff lost his feeling of regret. He lay on the bed and closed his eyes. He was about to fall asleep when there was a noise outside the hallway. First it sounded like a door being slammed, and then there was the sound of hurried footsteps.
Get lost.
In the hallway, Rose. This entire body was wrapped in a white sheet. Her snow-white shoulders and her slender legs were exposed, and she wasn't wearing any shoes. She glared furiously at Rey, who chased after her.
Rose, quickly come back inside. Look at how you're dressed. Don't let other men see you.
Rey was dressed about the same amount as Rose. He only had on a pair of red underwear, and the fat around his round waistline slightly trembled.
Rey, you're a big liar. Your family didn't help us.
Rose looked at Rey with a cold smile.
What? Rose, you have it all wrong. If it wasn't my family's help, who else could it be? Tell me, am I right?
Rey smiled awkwardly. He was already feeling guilty.
Why are you still pretending?
Rose shook the phone in her hand.
It was my father who called me just now. My father went to visit your father tonight and asked him about this matter. Your father said so himself that he wasn't the one who had helped. You've been lying to me all this time?
As soon as those two had entered their hotel room, Rey had started to play tricks on Rose. He had used a lot of flowery words to coax her into bed. Rose finally caved in. After all, it was just a matter of time. After taking a shower, she lay on the bed. Rey had already stripped naked and climbed in, but just at that moment, Rose's father called. So Rose got up and picked up the phone and got some news she wasn't expecting. Looking at Rey, who was lustfully staring at her, Rose felt extremely disgusted. So she ran out of the room in a fluster.
Your father went to see my dad.
Rey was dumbfounded, but he felt particularly uncomfortable. He and Rose were only one step away from magic, but then his father was in trouble. Wasn't this just teasing him?
Rose, listen to me.
Even though Rey only wanted to calm her down and get her back into the bed, he walked up to Rose and grabbed her arm.
Don't touch me. You're disgusting.
When Rose looked at Rey, she only saw his ugliness. When she looked at him, she felt nauseous and repulsed at the thought of having physical contact with him. Rose threw Rey's hand away so strongly that she accidentally hit the eagle statue beside her. A crash. The eagle statue shattered to pieces on the ground. Rose didn't seem to care about the damage. She was still quarreling with Rey, who was standing in front of her. Who broke the statue? A middle-aged man with a tall stature walked over and looked at the broken pieces on the floor with an angry and sorrowful expression.
Manager Sanchez,
said the hotel staff that had already gathered, lowering their heads in respect.
I did this.
Rose was currently fuming, so she admitted right away that she broke the statue. All right, thank you for being an honest young lady. Since you've admitted it, please compensate our hotel, Kyle said with a sad expression.
I'll decide if I compensate you. Look at it. Isn't it just a statue? Seriously?
Rose retorted during her anger. You are right, miss. It's a statue. Kyle sneered. But please pay now. This statue was created in 1986 by a prominent Russian sculptor. It was sold at the Christie's auction house the year before last for over $1 million.
What?
Rose thought. She misheard and looked at Kyle in disbelief. Kyle didn't bother to explain anything further to Rose. He asked someone to find the auction documents to show her. When she saw the documents, she was at a loss for words.
Over $1 million. That's as much as a year of my family's income.
She thought.
I was careless.
Rose's heart was flustered. Her entire body went weak, and her hands, which were holding the documents, were shaking uncontrollably. Didn't you say it was just a statue? Kyle sneered. Don't think that I'll let you get away with it. You must compensate me. Hurry up and call home if you need. Rose's heart skipped a beat again. The documents slipped out of her hands and her legs shook even more. If her father knew about this, he would beat her to death. Rose felt especially scared when she thought of her father's ferocious face.
Rose, what's wrong?
Susan and Joe heard the commotion and ran to Rose's side. Rose told them what had happened, and by then, her tears had already started to fall. She sobbed.
What should I do? If my father knows, he'll beat me to death. Sir, please don't make me pay, okay? I can work for you, and I'll pay you back. Do you need a nanny at home? I can work for you. Although I don't know how, I can learn.
Rose cried as she looked at Kyle with tears in her eyes. To hide this blunder from her parents, Rose was willing to do anything. Little girl, don't think of any other impractical methods. You should call your parents as soon as possible, Kyle said, thinking like a business person. Even though we felt that Rose was a bit pitiful, he still had to collect the money back. Rose felt complete despair, and her self-reproach, remorse, worry and fear mixed in her heart.
Mr. Sanchez,
Jeff said quietly as he leisurely walked over. He had heard most of what happened. Sir, Kyle was about to call out to Jeff, but he was stopped by Jeff's gaze.
Mr. Sanchez, I think the statue fell at a good time.
Jeff looked at Kyle and said with a faint smile. The moment Jeff said this, the surrounding people were all surprised.
Someone smashed a statue worth over $1 million. You think that was good? Wasn't that person asking for a beating?
They thought to themselves. You think so? May I have your opinion? Kyle said respectfully. His heart was filled with suspicion. What exactly did Mr. Florento mean?
Let me ask you, does this hotel host many Americans or Europeans?
Jeff asked. Of course, they are our main guests, Kyle said after thinking for a while.
So the patrons are American and European, yet the hotel spent a lot of money to buy a Russian sculpture and have it on display by the guest rooms. Do you know right now that our country and its allies are at odds with Russia? If the people knew that you had this expensive sculpture in your hotel, they might boycott the hotel. If this was on the news, your hotel's losses would be more than $1 million. That's why I said this situation happened at a good time.
Jeff reasoned with him. When the others heard Jeff's brilliant idea, they could not help but laugh.
This kind of story wouldn't even fool a 3-year-old kid. But he wanted to try and trick manager Sanchez.
When Rose saw Jeff standing up for her, she was a little touched. She smiled. Riley inside, she was grateful for his help, but it sounded so silly. He was just a fool who didn't understand what was going on. Oh, this young man is right. I wasn't thinkings. Kyle spoke with a respectful smile towards him. Contrary to what everyone else expected, they thought that Jeff would be made into a joke.